The barren wind swept across Dustfall Valley as if trying to strip the land to its bones, and somewhere beyond the rattling fences of the old Rydell Ranch, a voice echoed through the canyon, thin, desperate, trembling with exhaustion. "Deeper, please. I can't take it anymore." Rancher Colt Rydell froze where he stood, the reins in his hand slipping through his fingers as he listened again, unsure if the wind was playing tricks on his weary mind or if someone truly needed help. After 3 nights without proper sleep, after weeks of drought and the weight of his father's debts crushing his shoulders, he was already carrying more than most men could bear. But that voice, raw, cracking, begging, pulled him like a hook through his chest. With a jolt, he grabbed his lantern and pushed through the mesquite brush, boots crunching gravel as he moved toward the old well at the edge of the abandoned mining trail. His heart hammered like a loose wagon wheel the closer he came, until the flame of the lantern finally revealed a sight that slammed the breath clean out of him: a young woman clinging to the rope of the collapsed well, her fingers bloodied, her clothes torn by rock, her body trembling violently as she dangled above a pit so black it seemed alive. She wasn't crying for mercy, she was begging him to lower the rope deeper before she lost her grip and fell. "Please, deeper. I can't take it anymore," she gasped again, her arms quivering like threads ready to snap. Colt's hand flew to the crank, but something in him stilled for a heartbeat. Who was she? How long had she been down there? How had no one noticed? And why, despite her desperation, did she hold her grip with the stubborn tenacity of a soul who had fought far too long to give up now? He swallowed hard and shouted back, "Hold on. I'm here." Though his blood was running cold, he shoved the lantern onto a rock, gripped the rope, and began lowering it inch by inch, slowly, carefully, deeper into the darkness toward her. The rope burned against his palms, his muscles straining, the crank groaning with every rotation as if the well itself fought back. Her wide eyes glimmered in the lantern light, filled with pain but also relief, like she knew he would come, like she had trusted a stranger with her last breath. Don't let go," she whispered, voice cracking like dry wood. "Not planning to," he muttered, jaw locked tight, though fear crawled under his ribs. One wrong move and she would fall. One slip and both of them would be swallowed by that cursed pit. He braced his boots, drove his heels into the dirt, and pulled with everything he had. Inch by inch, she rose out of the darkness, her hair tangled, her skin scraped, but her determination fierce. At one point the rope jolted as a rotten piece of the old well wall crumbled away, and she screamed, a sound so raw Colt felt it in his bones. "I got you," he barked, pulling harder, fighting the shaking in his arms. His back burned. His breath hitched. But he didn't stop. Finally, with a final heave that tore something deep in his shoulder, Colt dragged her over the rim of the well, both of them collapsing onto the dry earth, gasping for breath. For a moment neither moved. Only the rustle of the dying desert wind broke the silence. Then, slowly, the woman opened her eyes, large, amber, and shimmering with unshed tears, and whispered, "You saved me." Why? Colt didn't know how to answer. Maybe because he saw in her the same exhaustion that lived in his own bones, the same quiet terror he felt each night when he wondered if he could keep the ranch alive one more day. Or maybe because something about her, fragile yet unbroken, struck through his loneliness like lightning. "Because you needed someone," he finally said, voice rougher than he intended. As he helped her sit up, she winced, clutching her ribs. Colt's brow furrowed. Whoever she wasn't just lost, someone had hurt her. Badly. The marks on her wrists weren't from climbing, they were from bindings. The kind used by outlaws. His jaw clenched as anger simmered in his gut. "Who did this to you?" he asked, but she shook her head violently. "No, not here. They'll come back. They're looking for me." Her breath quickened, panic rising like wildfire. Colt steadied her shoulders gently. "Not tonight they won't," he said, a vow forming in the gravel of his voice. "You're coming with me." She hesitated, staring into his eyes as if searching for the truth inside him. And whatever she found there, strength, or safety, or simply a man too stubborn to walk away, seemed to convince her. Slowly, she nodded. Colt lifted her carefully, letting her lean against him as they made their way through the desert, each step a promise he didn't fully understand yet. The moon cast pale light across the valley as he guided her home, unaware that saving her from the well was only the beginning, and the outlaws hunting her were far closer than he realized. But one thing was certain, from the moment he heard her voice in the darkness, his life was no longer his own. And as they approached the faint glow of his ranch house, the woman whispered, "You shouldn't have helped me. You don't know what's coming." Colt tightened his grip on her arm and replied with the quiet certainty of a man who had already chosen his path. "Then let it come." And as they crossed the threshold into the dim orange glow of the cabin lantern, the stage was set for the storm that would change both their lives forever. The storm rolled in before dawn, a low growl of thunder crawling over Dustfall Valley as Colt Rydell laid the injured woman, who finally whispered her name as Lyria, onto the old sofa near the hearth, her breath shallow, her hands trembling with a mixture of pain and fear she tried and failed to hide. Colt moved quietly around the cabin, lighting lamps, checking the windows, loading his father's old rifle with steady hands even though his heart pounded like a drum inside his ribs. He wanted answers, but he couldn't force them, not when she looked like she'd been dragged through hell. Still, when he knelt beside her and said gently, "Lyria, tell me who's after you," her eyes filled with a sorrow so deep it seemed carved into her bones. "They call themselves the Black Spur Riders," she whispered, voice quivering. "They took me to get information from my father, he's a railroad surveyor. They want a new route map, one that cuts through government-protected land so they can smuggle silver from the abandoned mines." He refused. "So they took me." Colt felt something inside him snap, not with fear, but with a rage so cold and sharp that it quieted every other thought. "They hurt you because he wouldn't betray innocent people," he muttered, his jaw clenching, his knuckles whitening on his knee. She nodded weakly. "He thinks I'm dead. I escaped last night but I fell into the well trying to hide." Colt swallowed hard, the image of her clinging to the rope burned into his memory. "You're safe now," he said. But her hand grabbed his wrist suddenly, surprisingly strong. "No. You don't understand. They're coming. They always come back to finish the job." And as if her words summoned fate, a sharp whistle echoed from the far ridge, one Colt recognized instantly. A signal. The riders were already in the valley. Colt stood, grabbed his rifle, and pulled the shutters closed. "Then this ends here," he said calmly, though every nerve in his body was electrified. Lyria pushed herself upright, struggling to speak. "You don't have to fight for me." Colt paused, turning to look at her. The fear in her eyes wasn't for herself, it was for him. And that struck him deeper than he expected. "Maybe I don't," he said softly. "But I will." Before she could argue, the first shot rang out, shattering the window beside the stove. Glass rained to the floor. Lyria cried out. Colt moved fast, pulling her behind the heavy oak table and covering her with his body as another bullet tore through the wall. Outside, hooves thundered. The riders had come in force. Colt's mind sharpened like a blade. He rolled to the side, raised his rifle, and fired a warning shot through the broken frame, hitting the lantern pole near the nearest rider and sending sparks across the dirt. "Rydell," a rough voice bellowed. "Hand over the girl and we'll spare your ranch." Colt spit on the floor. "Come take her," he shouted back. Lyria stared at him, terrified yet astonished at his defiance. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Colt didn't look at her, he was tracking shadows moving outside. "Because no one deserves to be hunted like an animal," he answered. "Because someone should have saved you before you ever reached that well. And because," he hesitated, the truth forming before he could stop it. "Because something about you wouldn't let me walk away." She blinked, startled, breath caught in her throat, but there was no time for words. More shadows advanced. Colt shoved the sofa in front of the doorway, grabbed Lyria's hand, and whispered, "Stay low." He kicked open the back door and sprinted across the yard toward the barn, drawing fire away from her. Bullets flew like angry hornets, splintering fence posts and kicking up clouds of dust. Colt ducked behind the water trough, returning fire with precision, dropping one rider from his horse. Another circled around. Colt slid behind a wagon, breathing hard, heart pounding, waiting, listening, calculating. A rider lunged around the corner. Colt swung the butt of the rifle like a hammer, knocking the outlaw cold. But more were coming. He heard Lyria scream from the cabin as two riders broke through the door. Colt felt something primal ignite inside him. He ran harder than he ever had in his life, crashing through the doorway just as one outlaw grabbed Lyria by the hair. Colt fired without hesitation, one shot, clean, fast, deadly. The other rider lunged at Colt with a knife. Colt blocked the strike, the blade grazing his arm, but he shoved the attacker backward into the hearth where the outlaw tripped and collapsed. Colt kicked the knife away and pinned him with the rifle barrel. "Who sent you?" he growled. The men spat blood. "Our leader. Morgan Black Spur, he's coming. And he'll kill you both." Colt's eyes hardened. "Not today." The outlaw swung at him again, but Colt struck him with the rifle and dropped him. Then he turned to Lyria, shaking, breathing fast, clutching her ribs. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "Only scared," she whispered. "And of losing you." Her voice surprised them both. Thunder cracked outside as if the sky itself reacted to her words. But before Colt could answer, the cabin door creaked, and there stood a towering man dressed in a long black coat, ice cold as the desert at midnight. Morgan Black Spur. Colt stepped in front of Lyria, raising the rifle. Morgan smiled. "You've caused me trouble, Rydell." "You picked the wrong girl to hurt," Colt replied. Morgan drew, but Colt was faster, not in body, but in will. He fired first. The blast echoed through the valley. Morgan dropped to his knees, shock flashing across his face before he fell lifeless onto the floorboards. Silence followed. Heavy, unreal, powerful. Colt lowered the rifle slowly, his breath shaking. Lyria rose, staggering toward him. "Colt, you saved my life again." He shook his head. "You saved yourself. I just helped." She stepped closer, placing a trembling hand on his cheek. "No. You fought for me when even I thought I wasn't worth saving." Colt swallowed, the weight of the moment pressing into his chest. "Then stay," he whispered without meaning to. "Stay here, until you're safe. Or longer if you want." Her eyes softened, warmth blooming through the fear. "Longer," she said. "If you'll have me." Outside, the storm finally broke, rain falling across Dustfall Valley as if washing away every dark thing that had happened there. Inside the cabin, Colt wrapped his coat around her and held her close, both of them knowing the danger had passed but their story had only begun.